Here in this session, we're going to be solving quadratic equations by taking square roots. Quickly, as a statement or an overview, if you have an equation in the format of x squared equals a, then solving that particular equation for x will mean that x is going to equal either the positive square root of a or the negative square root of a. Let's take an example, a very simple example, and display that. X squared equals 49. If I were to solve this equation, I could do it by taking the square root of both sides. The square root of x squared is just x, and the square root of 49 is going to either be a positive 7 or it's going to be a negative 7. So a way of combining those together is that you write the plus sign first on top, you write the minus sign right underneath it, and then you write the number that we were after. So x in this situation is going to equal plus or minus 7. And that corresponds with our statement that we started with here. If you start with x squared equals a, then x is going to equal either plus or negative the square root of a. Here on this screen, we have a quadratic equation here that's already been factored for us. We have x plus 2 in parentheses squared equals 16. Now let's go ahead and solve this problem for x. We can see here that the entire left-hand side of the equation is being squared. We don't just have one term that's being squared and then the rest of the terms are not. Every term on the left-hand side is being squared. The x and the 2 being added together in parentheses, and then the entire sum inside that parentheses is being squared. So with that being the case, if you have an entire side of your equation being squared, you can solve that problem or attempt to solve it by taking the square root of both sides. So if we were to now take the square root, I'm going to rewrite this as x plus 2 squared, squared parentheses equals 16. Then I said let's take the square root of the left side. Well, if we do that to the left, we also have to do it to the right. Well, what is the square root of x plus 2 squared? Well, it's just simply x plus 2. Another way of visualizing that would be, what's the square root of 10 squared? Well, it would just be the 10, right? The square root of 20 squared would just be the 20. The square root of x plus 2 squared is just simply the x plus 2 that you started with. So by taking the square root of the left side of the equation, we're left with x plus 2. Now we have to take the square root of the right side. Well, the square root of 16 is 4. Now we simply solve it for x. X is being added with a 2, so we have to subtract 2 from both sides. That'll leave us with x on the left, and 4 minus 2 would leave us with a 2 on the right. So x equals 2. 2 plus 2 squared, 4 squared does equal 16. However, I made a slight error here when I took the square root of both sides. I said that the square root of 16 was 4. Well, which it is, but that's not the only answer. Remember, I'm supposed to put a plus or minus before it, because the square root of 16 could also be a minus 4. Minus 4 times minus 4 is a positive 16. So I solved it for x plus 2 equals 4 and found out that x was equal to 2. Well, what about x plus 2 equaling minus 4? What would our value for x be there? Well, x is being added with a 2, so we have to subtract 2 from both sides. So that's going to give us x on the left and a minus 6 on the right. So our two values for x are x equals 2 and x equals minus 6. We've already put the 2 in to double check to see if it works. Let's put the minus 6 in. Minus 6 plus 2 is minus 4. Minus 4 squared is 16. 16 equals 16. Okay, we'll do one more here. Here is a number, here is a quadratic equation here. It's not in standard form because we do not have 0 on the right. However, it is still a quadratic equation. It's just not in standard form. But the reason why it's written this way is we can actually factor this right now and make it the sum of two squares. And the reason why we do that is we want to then use our solution of a quadratic formula or quadratic equation by taking the square roots of both sides. So let's go ahead and factor this. X squared minus 6x plus 9, that is the sum of two squares. It's going to be x minus 3 times x minus 3, or it's just x minus 3 squared. X minus 3 squared. That's what we're left with on the left side. And on the right side, we still have our 15. Now, the entire left-hand side of this particular problem is being squared. Therefore, we can go ahead, and I'm going to change colors here. We're going to take the square root of the left side and take the square root of the right side. Well, what is the square root of x minus 3 squared? Well, that's just simply x minus 3. Then on the right-hand side, we still have the square root of 15. And there's no way for us to simplify the square root of 15 any further. At this point now, we need to solve it for x. Well, x is having a 3 subtracted from it, so we need to add 3 to both sides. Well, that'll leave us with an x on the left. Then on the right, we're going to have the 3 that we just added, and that's going to be plus or minus the square root of 15. And once again here, I left off that plus or minus and should have written it in. After we took the square root of x minus 3 squared on the left, and after we took the square root of 15 on the right, the answer is going to be a plus or minus square root of 15. Then solving for x, we are left with x equals 3 plus the square root of 15, or 3 minus the square root of 15. Those are the two answers to this problem. And lastly, as a quick review, if you have x squared equaling a, then x is going to equal plus or minus the square root of a. And solving quadratic equations by taking square roots is actually a pretty beneficial strategy to use. Okay, that'll finish up session 91.